So today I'm showing uh, these little fighter jets I made a while ago. So basically, I went from like here to like all the way over here, and I'm trying to show basically like what I've learned, kind of about making this. So this is kind of like one of those. It's kind of like to be dead frank with you, kind of a stupid concept, right? Because like literally, like if you can build whatever and it'll work, but this is just more like I don't know, more optimized. I got kind of crazy with optimizing it. This is space engineers after all, and you got to engineer stuff, I guess. So over just like a couple months of having to rebuild this to make it like more optimized, basically show you what I learned. These two here, don't mind those. Those are just kind of oddballs that I made, but I kind of have them here just to show like how much I've done. And this one I'm standing on, um, is the first one I've ever made, right here. So I'm basically just kind of gonna go through a tour and kind of describe what you're really aiming for when you build these. So let me just kind of like do like a quick look around. So that's actually the second one. That's the third one. I went big, went kind of smaller. Try to make it look cooler. I'll try to optimize the engines a little bit. I'll get into how that works a little bit, and then went from that one, got the core really good, and then just made it smaller, and then made it where it was costed a lot less to make. So let's go to talk about like what are you trying to aim for, right? So basically, you're kind of aiming for, I mean, depending who you are, right? But you're kind of aiming for a few things, and that is, you're kind of aiming to get the amount of blocks needed as low as possible, while still not making it look, dumb. Um, while being cheap to build and like mass producible. And that's kind of another thing. Is like that's kind of my aim, right? Is like when I want to build this, I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, I made a little fighter jet, whatever the freak, right? But I want to be able to fit a bunch of these in a hangar. And like that's kind of like one of the problems with this is like this costs a lot each time. I'm not going to be able to mass produce these. So you're kind of aiming for, I am anyways, kind of aiming for when I went in making these to make them as compact but still as cosmetically pleasing as I could get them, while at the same time making them where there's not a lot less unnecessary blocks. So let me just kind of like let loose a secret here, right? To making these things, and that is, and this is pretty intuitive to some people, but if we pull out our little welder here, the armor in these things, like any type of small ship, is kind of useless. If it's not heavy, it ain't gonna really do anything. But if you made this entire shell out of heavy, this thing couldn't move worth a crap. So you're just a slow target. So what I'm trying to aim for anyhow is, when I was doing this, was to get everything behind here. Because this is the strongest part of the ship, is the cockpit, right? Whatever you got behind here is either you're going to die before the ship dies. It's kind of like one of those things. Whatever's behind this. So it's like more of a question of compressing everything, to have everything mainly behind that. Anything that's outside of this like cockpit behind it will go be destroyed pretty relatively easy. So this is kind of like a journey between me compressing that and kind of doing the cosmetics and whatever. And as I go through this, you'll see, like on this one, we're pretty freaking far out here, and on this one we're getting smaller. That's just these thrusters here are just more like additive, right? They're not really like, if you lost those you wouldn't die. And then I'm getting smaller until I got to around here. So I found that the best thing to do for this is to, like I said, put everything in one thing. So this is the newest one I got here. Let me go ahead and do something real quick. I'm just gonna, I could just spawn in another one of these real fast. But basically, if I just take off these little decoy merge blocks here, we can kind of see what what we're working with here. Everything's kind of stemming out of one little core, with all of the major thrusters, the HO generator, and the major main thruster directly behind this. There is like no vital block to the side of this. And you're like, well, what about this thruster? Well, then there's this one, and then there's that one over there. These are just like kind of extra fuel that you can kind of sacrifice, and it'll still function. Even that little conveyor there. So all of the really important bits is directly behind the head. So that makes it that when you're fighting, you know, front on, you're going to have to die before the ship will die, or you're going to have to dig into that core. So that's kind of like it's kind of like, you know, a core of an apple. You know what I'm saying? You got to get past the whole thing to get to it. It's kind of like, well, nothing. It's like what I was kind of like aiming for. Now on this thing, I got all the way down to 175 blocks, and that one there was like 200 with 300 something, 300. I don't remember. But if we see like one of the let's say newer-ish models, you know, we're at 238. Every kind of block I try to make count, so it didn't have like a waste in material. So this is like the most optimized I got it. Yeah. I'll show like a little bit of me just like fighting this thing like while standing still to show you how durable it is or whatever. But so you know, this is the thing about it, right? So this is kind of like one of the little things I want to say right here. Is this here is like a little gunship I made, just to kind of demonstrate what I'm about to say next, and that is that this is not the strongest thing you can make. What I made over here, but it's the strongest for its size. That's another thing. So like you can make this bigger all day long, and yeah, it will be more durable. But this is just very, very durable, considering that it's only got 175 blocks to. Oh, it's actually got more than that if you include the little merch box that were on this. But like the base model is 175 blocks, so you can spit this thing out on like a factory, and you know, it would be pretty useful. This one here, you know, you can do whatever. You can have more feel, you can make it stronger, and yeah, that will work. But if you're just trying to make one that you can fit into like the max amount of space in the hangar, this is the one I would go with. Because let's be honest here, even if you got something like that, you're not really going to take out a base. So you're only going to take out like little guys. So it's like a question of how many little guys can you take out, and will you survive afterwards? Kind of like ratio, right? Like little drones or something. And in the case with this thing, it's like freaking 10, depending on what you're going against. I'm not even joking. I actually used the first one in survival, and I would take on like entire fleets of freaking drones with just this little thing here. It could survive it, and I would bring it back to my ship and repair it and use it again. So now we gotta get the elephant out of the room if you haven't been able to tell yet. That is, I mean, address the elephant in the room, and that is hydrogen. I know some people don't like that, and some people do, but realistically, this is another kind of like thing about these is the agility to them. The faster you can get to 100 meters per second, the less you're going to get shot at. That's kind of the thing about it. So the higher amount of agility you can maintain, you know, the harder it's going to be to actually take you out. So that's kind of another thing I kind of considered in designing this. So if we look at here, we have heavy armor just on this like frontal section, but like the majority of it is just light armor, because, you know, this is cosmetics mostly, but like the heavy armor we're keeping to a minimum, just a little bit on the wings, like this little midsection, and that's it past there, and then this little section here to kind of guard this like backup forward thruster. But like yeah, like honestly, you want to make sure that these are light as possible, like, you know, for like the amount of thrust you have, so that way you can actually get the most out of its thrust you can. It's kind of like what I was aiming for. So like if we're about to start right now, I need to get to 100 and like, you know, whatever meters per second like right now to fight you, because they're not gonna wait for you. You know what I'm saying? And they're just gonna blow you out of the sky in like 3 seconds, because you're basically a stationary object. Aiming is a joke, which is actually another thing I'm gonna get into in a little bit. So that's one of the things I've realized is you have to get the weight as down as much as possible to make the thrusters more efficient. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. That's kind of like why these are half slabs. It's because this armor is not actually all that needed because you're kind of getting shot at like this. So like you kind of have to get way above you to kind of do some damage. And even then, you got like two back up front thrusters, forward thrusters. So it doesn't even matter. But that's kind of like one of the things I learned is that keeping down a weight, making like a frontal heavy armor to it, and also, like I said, getting that kind of stem thing going on directly behind the cockpit so it has the most like protection. So yeah, that's one of the things I learned. And also, there's another thing that I've noticed to be a serious problem with a lot of people's designs on these, and this is just me talking because you know there's always going to be better people out there that made these, but is how much people kind of rely on rockets. I don't know if that's like a cosmetic thing or something, just so it kind of like looks cool, but like rockets are kind of like a no-go in designing these because back to like my kind of characteristics of like what do I want out of a jet fighter, whatever the freak you want to call it. I'm looking for one that actually does the job. I can make in survival on a production level, right? Gets in there, does something, gets back, I can repair it later, everything's good. So you know, we're kind of looking at what and here's the thing, rockets aren't cheap. I mean, everybody figures that out, right? You know, like whatever, right? But like they're not cheap. Like, let's just be straight frank here. So yeah, I only got one rocket, and that's kind of because you would be surprised on how little this thing actually gets blown up. Like, you're not even joking. You think that I would get shot at a lot, but when the drones are targeting you, they're mainly aiming for your Gatling guns, because you got so many on the sides that this is like the last thing they shoot, believe it or not. So, because I've done a lot of testing with the same version, I would like go up against drones like 20 times with this thing, check on the damage, and all that. And yeah, this thing works pretty well. But yeah, what I was saying though is like when it comes to rockets, it's not the amount of rockets you want; it's the Gatlings, and it's not just the Gatlings; it's like the amount of them too. So you can kind of tell that all these Gatlings are on the same level, and that's kind of another thing. Is when you're kind of like sweeping across, and like shooting somebody, you're not going to be wanting here centering every freaking stupid Gatling. You're kind of going to want to like swipe it, kind of like a knife. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of like why I have 3 guns kind of going across. And if you're wondering, oh man, that's a lot of guns you got there. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it definitely is. But you kind of have to have that too, because you want a lot of output on this thing. You want to, when you shoot something, you want to cause as much damage as you physically can. And be able to get out there. And if you put too much Gatlings on it, then you're getting into the kind of idea of like making it look stupid. So I found like 6 Gatling guns, 1 rocket launcher is like a good ratio. The thing about rocket launchers is you're not going to hit anything with these things. And like I said, they cost too much. Like, you're never going to hit anything with this thing. Like, may God have mercy. If you hit anything on this thing, you have better chances of winning the lottery than you do of hitting a freaking moving object with this thing. So rocket launchers, I've always made sure that I've kind of realized that they don't work very well when you're actually in like a dogfight with these things. You're not going to actually hit anything with those. So you're kind of relying, like I said, mainly on your Gatlings. I mean, I guess most people kind of figure that out. And also, back to what I was saying with the hydrogen, because I totally forgot about that. And that is, like I said, like, let me go back over here. I think I was talking about this a second ago when I was talking about the hydrogen. And that is, well, I was talking about agility. That is one main fact, but I gotta go back to it to say one last thing. And that is, that just the kind of realistic expectations out of these things, and that is they're weak is all you know, they're weak, right? Any like real ship can take this thing on, and that's kind of just the nature of it. So a hydrogen, you want that agility, but that's kind of the thing about it is if I go turn off the H2O generator, the fuel, it's only gonna last a couple minutes, you know. As you can see, it's going down like one every once in a while. Like, it's only gonna last a couple minutes, you know, if you're in the middle of fighting. But That's kind of the thing. You got a problem, you take one of these things out. Um, you know, you do what you got to do. You get back. You refuel it. It's kind of like one of those things. The amount of fuel you're carrying, if I'm honest with you, half this freaking amount of fuel storage is going to blow up on you. So carrying a lot of fuel is kind of just stupid. If you're just trying to fight something and get out, this thing will do the trick. If you're trying to go for longer distances, you're going to need to add more fuel storage, but it's not really going to do anything. When you're kind of up close and personal, you're probably going to die before you run out of fuel, even if you took out quite a few drones. So it's kind of like the reality of that. And there's another thing is, this is the thing I gotta kind of address with this, is that, like I said, the bigger ones, they're not actually all that bad, because you can take a pretty good amount of hits with this thing, but you're literally like a little. This one here moves pretty good, you know, right here, but like, you know, most of the times you're gonna be like one freaking massive object, and this thing here, if you're trying to fight like that one I had over there, you're just shooting this little itty bitty thing, and it fits well in hangars and whatever else, but like, you're trying to shoot that, well, this thing's trying to shoot you, and you're like this massive freaking little fighter jet, and I don't even have to try to hit that. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of the thing, is this, that the lower size also improves just the sheer fact that hitting you is like so crazy hard. I had this guy I was playing with one time, and I was like, okay, let's do like a little thing. He pulled out like 4 different little fighter jets his people made on the workshop, and I took that all of them with this thing. Then he got him the one I was using, because he copied my design, pasted it, and I fought myself in this thing, and it was like trying to hit a little needle in a haystack, because you know you're not fighting like this. You're fighting like way out there. You know, and there's like a little itty bitty freaking little thing you're trying to hit. But that's not a good example like that. There's like an older version like that little itty bitty thing. So the making it small also helps with the fact you're not going to get shot, and that means when you repair it, there's less things to actually fix. Even if you have the heavier armor, you're going to have to pay for that in survival every time you go to fix one of these things. Depending on what that material is made out of, you know, that's going to do its own thing. And I'm just saying right now, like, just for the record, making these things out of entirely heavy armor, now that can work, I would suppose, but 90% of the time that's not going to do crap, because I found that out at this stage, like literally at the beginning. Like, I made my first one I ever built was out of heavy armor, because they have this one on the workshop called the Heavy Interceptor, I think it's called. And I was like, oh, this thing's all out of heavy armor. I think I got to start with that. That sounds cool. And the lighter armor ones always won, because the thing is so slow, and it takes so much fuel to move around, and it's not even funny. And that's the thing I will say though too, is if you can get away with, like, I guess lower agility, getting those atmospheric thrusters or iron thrusters or whatever, they actually do have quite a bit more durability to it. Because this has got a matter of, you blow up the fuel tanks, or you blow up the connections to the fuel tanks, and you know, the entire thing's going to fall out of the sky. While as the thruster, you have to specifically hit each thruster in order to knock it out, but you're not going to get the agility. So it's kind of like a trade-off thing. But for what I found though, major thing is kind of keeping it all in like one little thing to get everything behind that cockpit. Hydrogen gives you the best agility, giving it like frontal armor, so it's still light but can take a beating right to it, so you don't get into that core. Lining the guns up so you can kind of sweep like a knife, making a pretty decent amount of guns, keep it down to your rockets. Not worrying about making any crazy amounts of fuel sources. No crazy amount of fuel source, and I think keeping the size down, making sure it fits in hangar doors real easy, making it a hard target to hit. That's kind of all the points I kind of want to check off on the list. So yeah, this has been like, I don't know how many months in progress of working on this, but yeah, this is kind of the things I learned. So yeah, there you go.